It seems that, after a long evolutionary process, our awareness has gradually transformed and become more open. It gradually matures to a level where we even think we are in control of our thoughts and behavior. And growing with it is the seed of the will to power within us. Whether we are the type of person who is good at disguising ourselves, or the type of person who does not like fighting for rights, there are also times when we do not allow ourselves to accept the thought that we are a puppet of a certain group. However, a tree cannot become a forest, and an individual cannot live independently or separate from heaven and earth. Social psychology will tell us a completely different story. Each life contains a different story. Similarly, each brain also contains a different thinking system. But in today's society, it is impossible to completely separate yourself from that context and avoid all interaction with external factors. Therefore, each of our thoughts and actions not only directly affects our results, it also affects those who come into contact with us, whether directly or indirectly during that period. Therefore, influencing each other's thoughts is something that each of us can hardly control. However, what we witness through the dark side of crowd psychology leads to the formation of thoughts. How to limit the influence of crowd psychology on us? Does it have any true significance? The natural human tendency is to copy the behavior of others. But why do other people influence us so much? One of the reasons is that we live in a complex world, beyond our imagination. Once the information network is strongly and closely connected, information spreads under that network, becoming visible traps that take us into the maze, without even realizing it. Being in a society that emphasizes flexibility and speed has prompted us to quickly find a ready-made model answer. To avoid wasting time correcting mistakes, we use other people's decisions as a heuristic shortcut to navigate our lives. When in an ambiguous and uncertain situation, we often observe other people to see how they react. We assume that other people may know something that we don't know, so we evaluate their reaction before deciding how we will react. If those around us act as if it is an emergency, we will treat it as one and act accordingly. But if those around us appear calm, we may not realize the urgency of the situation and therefore be unable to intervene. British philosopher and mathematician Alfred North Whitehead once said, "Civilization advances by extending the number of operations we can perform without thinking about them." In his book Influence, Cialdini gives many evidence to prove an idea that advertisers don't need to convince that the product is good. They just need to say, "Other people think so too." Using a simple heuristic about the idea of popularity is good, as a lever can always bring us unexpected results. However, the problem is that the tendency to look to others to determine how to respond can be skewed by a phenomenon called pluralistic ignorance. This ignorance describes a situation in which the majority of group members believe in their own views, but assumes that most others believe the opposite. For example, a lack of pluralistic understanding explains why college students often do not ask questions in class. Suppose that one of the students in class is confused about the material their instructor is presenting, they want to ask the lecturer to clarify it. But before raising her hand, she might look around the room to see if any other students are wondering and raising their hands like her. If no one else does, she will conclude that she is the only person in the room who doesn't understand the problem. To avoid looking stupid, she may choose not to raise her hand and not ask the question. However, one thing that can be certain is that no less than one of them has the same question as her, but perhaps they were influenced by the mentality of the crowd and did not act differently like her. Sometimes crowd psychology deceives our emotions like that. According to common understanding, democracy is the power of the crowd, in contrast to non-democracy, which is the power of the few, in the condition that the crowd converges the necessary and sufficient elements for democratic practice, especially when the level of education and information is perfect. The decisions of the crowd are always wiser than the decisions of the few. However, crowd decisions may not necessarily have democratic meaning, and in many circumstances fall into formal democracy, or imposition by a short-sighted crowd. Once we fall into a situation of being manipulated by that group of formal democracy, how can we face the court of our conscience after the sad results of the victim group in that movement we joined? On the other hand, what should we do if one day we become a victim of those attacks? From a socio-psychological perspective, I was once a victim of school cultural violence when I was a high school student. Although it is not serious enough to cause injury, but the mental pressure and isolation for a 15-year-old kid, the age when we should be living in the most open environment, to facilitate the development of thinking, its consequences only make me narrow my scope and retreat into my own small world. At that time, I did not understand why those people chose to act so aggressively, but I did not hate them. I stayed in my small world for nearly a year and only contemplated one question. Maybe they did that for their own reasons. But I ask myself, do their reasons matter? Does it affect who I am? No, of course. I was born with an upbringing that placed respect first. I respect their choices and also respect my way of being a human being. I spent the next half a year penetrating their inner world. I learned about their way of thinking, and at the same time, silently proved to them one thing: our views always change. Today, that person's shortcomings in our eyes make us hate them, but tomorrow, that shortcoming becomes evidence to help us prove that a certain value system is meaningful to us. The existence of two opposites always complements each other at appropriate times. We should not develop the idea of disliking it because we do not need it at this time. The next time we need it, we change our attitude. Although we cannot change the fact that our consciousness and actions can impact the perceptions of others, the choice of being affected positively or negatively depends on our perception. Psychologists have also researched and discovered that the most important factor influencing crowds is how many people hold that opinion, not the opinion itself. And because opinions are always changing, tomorrow some allies who once shared the same opinion with us leave us, and entering a new circle of relationships is very normal. Even though the outcome may hurt us, our feelings are our responsibility alone. What kind of emotions we choose to face that problem has nothing to do with those old allies. And our urge to learn about how to limit the influence of crowd psychology, if viewed from another perspective, is no different from following a new crowd. The only difference is that this crowd takes the idea of negating the power of crowd mentality is the focus of all problems. People who have the same thoughts as us are not rare. So it is obvious that we belong to a certain community, even though we are in a community where only our ideas are different, or we exist in a group of people with the same awareness as us. Whether that community is small or large, it cannot change the fact that we will never be alone on the journey we choose to walk. The bigger our hearts, the more sparkling and beautiful the light we shine into this world. So don't let the gloomy thoughts of a group of people who don't share your understanding waste your precious time.